The sun had barely begun to rise over the mountains of Afghanistan when Sergeant Emily Carter crept through the jagged rocks, her breath steady and measured. The mission was simple in theory: infiltrate the enemy's stronghold, gather intelligence, and exfiltrate without detection. But in practice it was always far more dangerous. The insurgents were well entrenched in the mountains, and even the slightest misstep could turn their world upside down. Emily had always been good at moving in the shadows. As a child, she had run track and field, quick on her feet, a blur in the air. That agility had followed her into adulthood, where it had become an asset in the military. But it wasn't just her speed or her physical strength that set her apart. It was her ability to think under pressure. In the military that made her deadly. The mission had already cost one life. Lieutenant Reed, her commanding officer, had been killed in a firefight just 2 days earlier. It was a stark reminder of the dangers of their work. But for Emily, it only made her more determined to get the job done. She had a duty to finish what Reed had started, no matter the cost. She crouched behind a rock and peered through her scope. Through the haze of early morning light, she spotted a group of enemy soldiers gathered around a campfire, their rifles propped against the stone. There were 5 of them, and they were talking in low voices, unaware of her presence. Emily's heart raced, not from fear, but from the exhilarating thrill of being so close to her target. She adjusted her position carefully, her hand on the trigger of her sniper rifle, the world narrowing down to the tiny crosshairs. Just as she was about to pull the trigger, her earpiece crackled to life. "Sergeant Carter," a voice whispered in her ear. It was Colonel Foster, her handler back at base. "Abort the mission. We've just received orders from higher up. You're to pull out immediately." Emily's fingers hovered over the trigger. The order was clear: get out now. She knew better than to question orders, but the soldier in her wanted to finish the job. To avenge Reed. But duty called. "Understood, sir," Emily replied, her voice cool, despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. She took one last look at the enemy soldiers, who were still oblivious to her presence, before silently disappearing into the shadows. 3 weeks later, Emily found herself in an entirely different world. No longer on the front lines of Afghanistan, she was standing in front of a sleek glass and steel building in Washington, D.C., the CIA's headquarters. She had been called in for something bigger, something more covert than the dangerous operations she had executed in the field. Emily had always known her skills could be used in a different arena, but she had never anticipated this, being recruited by the CIA to become an operative in the shadowy world of espionage. Inside the building, she was ushered into a small briefing room, where a tall man with dark hair and a stern face was waiting. His sharp eyes regarded her with a kind of cold calculation, but there was something else there. Respect, perhaps. "Sergeant Carter," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Director Gregory Hayes. I've reviewed your service record. You're exactly what we need." Emily shook his hand firmly, though she couldn't hide her surprise. "I'm honored, sir." "Good," Hayes said, motioning for her to sit. "You've done well in the military, but now we need to see if you can handle the world of intelligence. The stakes are higher, the enemies are more elusive, and the risks are greater. You won't be carrying a rifle anymore, but you'll still be in the line of fire. Only this time, the battlefield is invisible." Emily's pulse quickened. She had spent years honing her physical and tactical abilities, but this was something entirely new. The transition would be difficult, and the weight of responsibility would be heavier than anything she had ever experienced. "Your first mission will be a test of your ability to blend into the shadows," Hayes continued. "You will be infiltrating a high-level meeting between several foreign diplomats and underground operatives suspected of funneling weapons to hostile forces. The meeting will take place in Paris, and you'll be using your military background to blend in as a security officer for the venue. But the real job is to gather intelligence. We need to know who's behind this operation, and we need it fast." Emily nodded. "Understood, sir. This mission is vital," Hayes said. "We're on the brink of something far larger than what you've dealt with before. This could affect not just the safety of our country, but the world. Paris was as beautiful as Emily had imagined it, but the elegance of the city hid the danger she was about to face. Her CIA training had prepared her for many things: intelligence gathering, blending in, and remaining calm under pressure, but nothing had prepared her for the kind of high-stakes operation she was about to execute. She arrived at the venue, a luxurious hotel on the outskirts of the city. As a former military officer, she had a particular way of moving: sharp, deliberate, and confident. The security team assigned to the event hardly gave her a second glance as she passed through the entrance, a small earpiece in place and a concealed pistol at her side. Inside, the venue was grand. The grand chandelier illuminated the marble floors, but it was the men in dark suits she was focused on. The diplomats, the arms dealers, and the operatives. All of them were here, and Emily had to gather information without blowing her cover. She took her position in the back of the room, pretending to monitor the crowd as the men engaged in casual conversation. Every word, every glance, every subtle movement was important. Emily had learned to read people in the field. Body language, tone of voice, even how they held their drink could tell her something crucial. Then she saw him, the man who would change everything. A tall figure in a black suit, with sharp eyes and a cold smile. He was speaking with a well-known arms dealer, and Emily caught snippets of their conversation. Words like shipment, weaponized, and final delivery. This was bigger than she thought. But before she could take another step, something caught her attention: another operative. His movements were too deliberate, too coordinated. He was watching her. She quickly adjusted her position, pretending to read her notes, but her heart was racing. Was he a threat? Or was he one of the other operatives planted within the room? As the meeting continued, Emily knew she had to act fast. She needed to get closer, gather more intel, and get out before things escalated. She made her move toward the bar, where the target was sitting with another diplomat, speaking in low tones. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice steady. She leaned over the bar, catching the diplomat's attention. "Can I offer you another drink?" The diplomat nodded, and Emily reached for a glass, but in the reflection of the polished surface, she saw the figure, moving quickly toward her. He had been watching her, but she didn't have time to make a move. In one smooth motion, Emily reached for her concealed weapon and drew it with lethal precision. The man froze, his eyes locking with hers in shock. "You've been following me," she said coldly, her finger barely touching the trigger. "That's a mistake." The diplomat blinked, but Emily could see the fear in his eyes. Without hesitation, she pressed her earpiece. "I've got the intel. Sending it now." She handed the man over to her colleagues in the security room, and within moments, her mission was complete. She had gathered the names, the codes, and the exact details of the operation. It was a major arms deal, one that would have destabilized countries and cost thousands of lives. Back at CIA headquarters, Director Hayes was waiting for her. The mission had been a success, but there was something different in his eyes when he saw the intel she had gathered. "You did well, Carter," Hayes said, but his tone was less congratulatory than expected. "But we've got a problem." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What's the issue, sir?" "It's not just about the weapons. There's a network, an entire underground organization. And it goes higher than we thought. Much higher." Emily's mind raced. She had known the stakes were high, but this was something entirely different. She had just uncovered a conspiracy that could shake the world to its core. "Where do we go from here?" she asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. "We go deeper," Hayes replied. "We follow the trail. And Carter, you'll lead this operation. Your skill set is exactly what we need." In that moment, Emily knew her life had changed forever. From the battlefields of Afghanistan to the shadowy world of espionage, she was now playing the deadliest game, one where the stakes were higher than ever before. Months passed, and Emily became one of the CIA's most trusted operatives. Her ability to move unseen, gather intel, and strike without detection made her invaluable. She uncovered networks of corruption, exposed hidden arms deals, and thwarted terror plots that could have cost millions of lives. But in the end, it was the same gift that had made her a legend in Afghanistan, the ability to see in the dark, that had made her so deadly in the world of espionage. Emily Carter had gone from soldier to spy, and in that transformation, she became one of the most dangerous and skilled operatives the world had ever known. Her story, once known only to the shadows, would one day be told to inspire a new generation of operatives who would understand what it truly meant to play the deadliest game.